Good morning, everyone. My name is Kevin Shives. I'm a partner here in the SSF Consulting Group. With me today is Earl Hunt. Earl is our Senior Solutions Consultant. Here at SSF, we work with a variety of VC entities within our audit and tax practices. And it's through that connection that we've seen some of the challenges that VC clients face with accounting and reporting requirements. This is why we're very excited to share with you today our Sage Intacct configuration that addresses many of those challenges. For those that on the phone that may be new to SSF Consulting, we focus on three primary service offerings: in technology, of course, internal audit and SOX, and outsourced accounting. Of course, today is all about technology, and I've listed on this page our offerings and the different platforms that we currently work with. Sage Intacct being the focus today, of course. From an agenda perspective, pretty tight. I'll provide a general overview of the Sage Intacct platform, and then I'll be turning it over to Earl, who will take you through a few slides of setup and then right into the product tour. We will also leave some time at the end for a little Q&A. You know, if there's one thing that we've learned from COVID is that being in the cloud is absolutely essential. You must have flexible systems you can access securely from anywhere and at any time. Sage Intacct is full cloud, and everyone's always on the same version. There are quarterly updates that require no actions by the users other than reading the release notes to see what updates, new features, and functions are available. Another important thing is that Sage Intacct is an open API platform. And what that means is that you can maximize your integration opportunities with other systems that you already have or those that you might acquire in the future. Additionally, Sage Intacct has a very active marketplace. I think of this as kind of their version of the App Store, where best-in-class cloud systems have already pre-built integrations to Sage Intacct. There are many platforms there. Most common ones we work with are like Bill.com and Expensify. But if you go there, you will recognize the whole host of logos. Sage Intacct is the only accounting platform endorsed by the AICPA. And as accountants, we all love that because, as we know, they set all the standards. One of the most important aspects of our partnership with Sage Intacct is that since 2015, they continue to be a leader in customer satisfaction. This is absolutely essential for us. We don't want to bring anything to our client base that isn't going to bring the highest satisfaction possible, especially a software platform that's going to be with you for many years. And now I'm going to turn it over to Earl, and he'll take you the rest of the way. Earl?
Great, thanks, Kevin. So our work with a good volume of VC firms and VC service providers has uncovered these challenges in venture capital accounting and reporting. And the first one is really the challenge of using an application like QuickBooks and Xero and trying to manage multiple entities. So managing your general partnership, managing your different funds, your management company, all of those in different instances of QuickBooks and Xero, and constant logging in, logging out. Also, not having cloud access and having just access from your desktop only, and this lack of visibility across everything that's happening within the venture capital entities. The next challenge that we typically see is really reporting limitations. So a couple reasons for that. One is just the lack of detail that traditional systems allow for. And so because venture capital firms, particularly the funds themselves, really need to have a lot of detail on their reporting, then what we see people doing is exporting out to Excel and using spreadsheets and spending a lot of time capturing that detail outside of the system. And then finally, allocations, of course, down to the actual general partner and limited partner level can be very time consuming, error prone. This is something that also we see being done primarily in spreadsheets and managing those different triggers that may happen in the limited partner agreements and the complexities that go along with that. So on the next slide are really the key concepts and how Intacct approaches remedying those challenges for venture capital companies. And the first one is real-time dashboards. So we're going to see the types of information that can be put on these real-time dashboards, including KPIs and metrics, financial reports, schedules, visual representations of information, and charts and graphs, as well as management reports. I'm also going to show you the concept of push-button financial and management reports. So all of those reports that you need to produce for both internal and external reporting purposes, including statement of net assets, operations, and cash flows, all the different schedules for financials, internal schedules with return percentages and partner capital schedules can all be produced right within Sage Intacct without having to export out to Excel and massage those into the format that you need. Another key concept is managing all of the entities in one instance of Sage Intacct. So that way we can manage all of your entities, your management fee revenue, operating expenses, partner equity, as well as general partnership activity, and manage all of those funds that are being used to invest in portfolio companies, and also accommodate all of their purchase transactions, fair market value adjustments, and so on and so forth. We also remedy that issue with the level of detail by the concept of tagging transactions with dimensions in the system. And this allows us then to have detail at the investment level by type of transaction and track everything down to the individual general partner and limited partner level. And then finally, this challenge of allocations, according to the limited partner agreements, can be automated within the system with an allocation engine that supports multiple scenarios and actually books the allocations in different scenarios down to the individual partner level, so we can produce the schedules and reporting that we need all the way down to those levels. So with that, Kevin, I'm going to share my screen and start going and showing people how those key concepts can help remedy those issues. So let me share my screen. Hide some controls here and bring up Sage Intacct. So the first concept that we're going to focus on is real-time dashboards. And so I'm going to show you about 3 different dashboards here and talk about the different types of components that can be put on to these dashboards. So we're looking at one now that's looking at kind of an overview of an investment fund. What we see at the top there are KPIs or metrics, what Sage Intacct calls performance cards. And we can also, at the top right hand, we can filter this dashboard by an as of date, and either we can look across the entire enterprise if we want to, or we can focus on a particular entity or fund within the organization. These performance cards here are using the concept of grouping information together, looking at all my stock investments, my hedge funds, bonds, and so on and so forth. And they're comparative in nature, so I can get an indication of how that's trending, for example, this quarter versus a prior quarter. The system also provides a lot of visual depiction of information in the form of charts and graphs that can be then put onto the dashboard. So we see some portfolio trends here on a bar chart, as well as market values. We can have We can have pie charts, all kinds of graphical representations of information. I'm going to go over here to another dashboard really quickly to show you another example of a role-based dashboard. So I'm going to show you one from a controller standpoint. So this might be the controller for the management company, and they're more focused on things like G&A expenses, salary and wages. And we can also on the dashboard put approval queues. So that's another component that we can put on the dashboards, is show some visibility on what POs are in my queue to approve. And then another really important component of dashboards is this ability to have a collaborative discussion. And this can occur among any of the users of the Sage Intacct system. And the users can be strictly accounting users, fund managers, people that are in the system every day putting in transactions. But we can also extend out the access to the dashboard to the partners themselves and start having discussions around objects and financial reports that are happening within the system. And those are directly tied into what we're talking about. So here we're having a discussion about a particular investment, and can you please call me? And we have follow-up discussions about what's happening with that particular investment, and we can drill right back into what the discussion is about. And then I want to turn over here to another dashboard that's really focused on VC funds. And this has got a lot of components here that measure the health of that fund in the form of these KPIs and metrics. What's the return that we're experiencing across different industry sectors, what the portfolio companies that we're invested in. And again, I can change that date. Here we're looking at 12/31/2019. I can easily change that to 3/31/20 and hit apply, and then everything recalculates and redisplays. And now I see that I actually have some realized gains, because in that first quarter of 2020, I liquidated one of my portfolio companies, and the unrealized gain then got recomputed and turned into a realized gain. So all of that's visible in the form of a dashboard here in this venture capital fund dashboard. Other components on this VC fund dashboard are going to be the investment schedule. So I can see all of my different portfolio companies here on this report, as well as the segregation by the different industry type, the number of shares we've invested in that portfolio company, as well as cost, any sale that we've done, realized and unrealized gains, as well as the fair value of the investment as of 3/31/20. And then I can add some color coding here, and my eye goes right to the outstanding gains that are in green. Other components of this dashboard are going to be those partner capital reports. And so I'm looking at that inception to date under a couple of different allocation scenarios, right? So I can see what was the trigger, what was the allocation capital look like, the partner's capital look like before that trigger, and what does it look like now, and even compare them side by side. So those kinds of reports can be put onto the dashboard. Over here, I've got a graphical representation of the investment value over a couple of years here, and we can see that in this current period, we've got that sale of one of our portfolio companies. And then our traditional financial reports internally, statement of operations, statement of net assets, and statement of cash, all can be put on to the dashboard and accessible real time, or change that date parameter. I'm going to switch over then to the concept of push button reports. We've already seen a lot of reports that can appear on dashboards, and I'm going to go over here to the report center. So the report center is the repository for all of the reports in the system. And here, when I've opened up reports, I can see the reporting engines that come with the system. So there is a financial report engine that comes with the system, financial graphs. Of course, that's where we create those visual representations of what we of what's going on, and we've seen those on a couple of the dashboards. And then there's a custom report writer that can pretty much go after any piece of information in the system in tabular form and let you report on that. I'm going to go right into the report center. And as I said, this is the repository for all of the reports in the system, financial reports, as well as operational reports that come from the individual modules within the system, because this not only are we addressing fund management in those specific reports and allocations down to the partner level, but this is a full financial system as well. So when we look at the drop-down list here, we see we have a full general ledger. We've got accounts payable, accounts receivable, cash management. So that becomes the core modules, and then we're using the ability to tag transactions to dimensions, which we'll be looking at shortly, to get that level of detail that we need for all the fund type reporting. So here I'm looking at all the reports within the system. I can narrow that down to just the reports for accounts payable, for example. So I can do a lot of filtering here. So I can really run any of those reports. I'm going to go back to all applications, and I'm just going to look at the reports that I like to run on a regular basis, which are my favorites, and I can just toggle a star to make it a favorite. And I've done that for a lot of reports. So I just now hit the favorite, and here's all of the financial reports and schedules that I like to run on a regular basis. So for example, I might want to come over here and run an individual partner capital statement for a particular limited partner. And I can do so by just clicking on the name of the report. And then that typically is going to bring up some prompts for me that's going to show me an as of date. If I leave it blank, it's going to assume I want to see it as of today. And then some filters. In this case, it's defaulting to the WDC Foundation, which is one of my limited partners. And I'm going to take a look at what this partner capital statement looks like as of 12/31/2019. And all I need to do then is hit the OK button, and that brings that up to the screen. And then I can start to work with that report and drill down into underlying details. Also, I have the ability right from here to print this report, and that's going to create a PDF file for that report that I can use and distribute to other people. I can export this report to Excel. You don't have as much need to export reports to Excel as you do with other entry-level systems, but you could if you wanted to. Or I can email this report directly to the limited partner from here as well, or I can set that up on an automated basis. So here I'm seeing in this report, committed capital, less capital not called. And this information, of course, is not something that you would book in your financials, but I have the ability to use statistical accounts to capture that information and put it onto a report. And of course, capital contributions are a financial number. And then all of those unrealized gains then we're showing by portfolio company allocated down to this particular partner. And we'll see that when we get to the allocation and how that happens automatically just by pointing to the unrealized gains and the percentages that we use according to the limited partner agreement. And so that's an example of a report then that I can just run at any time. When I go back here and look at the report center, I can see also I can export that right from here without having to run the report as a PDF, a CSV, or an Excel. Or over here, I can schedule the report to be run and sent out to one or more people on a regular basis. So all that can happen right here from the report center. The financial reports that are necessary can be run from here as well. And we saw that I put them on the dashboard as well. So if I wanted to look at, for example, a statement of operations, I can look at that. Let's say I want to see that as of 12/31/19. I'll change that, hit OK. And now I've got my statement of operations that's summarized into expenses, management fee, professional fees, my beginning and ending balance for unrealized appreciation on investments, all resulting in a net increase or decrease in net assets. So all of that then formatted right within the financial report writer within Sage Intacct in the exact format that you need for those financial reports. Let's switch over then to the concept of the entities and how we can really manage all of the entities within your environment, whether it be general partnerships, management companies, and any number of funds. And I'm going to switch over here to what is called in a multi-entity environment, the top level. And it's the top level because here I've got access to all of the entities that I'm managing within this one environment or instance of Sage Intacct. So when I go down and look at all entities, I see I've got a general partnership that I'm managing. I've got a number of different funds and so forth. I've got this management company here as well as this VC Fund A, which we've been working with and will continue to work with in terms of a fund. So I've got the ability here at the top level to then simply go over to the top level. And if I wanted to, for example, be working just in the management company, I just choose that. And so what this does is it opens up another tab in my browser. And now this tab is strictly transactions and dashboards and so forth that are just for the management company. I'd already opened one previously for the Fund A, and now I've got the management company open as well. I could go over here and open up the general partnership. I've also got the ability, and I'm going to go over here to a little bit of the setup at the user part of it. I'm going to go over here to company, and we're going to look at users. So these are all the users in my system, and I'm showing you this because I can set my security by entity, by user. So I might have a fund manager, and I just want that individual. I'm going to go edit that and show you that this individual, Nick Tesla, I only want him to have access to one fund, and it happens to be VC Fund A. So when Nick logs into Sage Intacct, he's going to log directly in to VC Fund A, and that's all he's able to see. Other individuals might have access to multiple funds or the management company, the general partnership as well. It's all dependent upon that role and the security rights that you want to give that particular individual. Another great byproduct of what we call multi-entity share and managing all of the entities within one login of Sage Intacct is the ability to manage the chart of accounts at the top level, so that instead of, hey, adding a new account that's going to be used by the funds to, let's say you've got 10 or 15 funds, you can add it at the top level, and then it's available to each of the funds. So that way I don't have to go into each and every fund and add that same account. So I've got some economies there in managing at the top level. Same thing applies in managing vendors. Maybe you've got several funds or a management company that is using the same vendor. I can add it once at the top level and then decide which of my entities can use that particular vendor. And then another great byproduct of the multi-entity shared and this concept of a top level that can see across the entire enterprise is the ability to put in, for example, an accounts receivable transaction over here at the top level. So I put an accounts receivable transaction in here. Let me renumber that. And this one here is actually the management AR invoice. And when I put this in at the management level, then it's going to automatically create the AP invoice for the fund that I'm billing, right? So I've got this intercompany AR AP that happens automatically by the concept of the multi-entity shared concept. Let's switch over to the level of detail that we're getting out of the system. When we looked at the reporting here, and we go back to the fund dashboard for the VC fund, we've got a tremendous amount of detail that we're capturing. So we're capturing the actual portfolio companies here. When we drill down, let me bring this report full screen. We can bring any of these reports full screen from the dashboard itself and start to work with that. So if I go down, for example, to unrealized depreciation, appreciation on this investment, then I see this concept of tagging to the dimension level. So this happened in VC Fund A, so it was tagged to that fund. This happened to be for the Exceed Company's Series C and preferred stock. That's another dimension that I use. And this happened to be a transaction that was to increase that investment by a fair value adjustment. So this is another dimension of the transaction type, so I can segregate that out. So all of that is being done by tagging and putting in either journal entries, AR, AP transactions to a tremendous amount of detail. And then we'll see when we get to the allocation piece that then we're taking all of those fair value adjustments at the portfolio company level and then taking it a step further all the way down to the actual partner level, which is another, of course, level of detail. And just to show you briefly where those dimensions reside, I'm going to go over here to my reports again and go over to this section, the setup section, and these were all my dimensions that I'm using within the system. So instead of a segmented GL account structure, I get to what we call tag transactions with things like department, what's the investment that we're purchasing, or the investment that we're booking a fair value adjustment or liquidating and booking a realized gain or loss. Who are my investors, for example, right? So I can look at those and just look at the list of my partners. And so here I've got my 2 general partners and 3 limited partners, and that's how I tag those during the allocation process all the way down to that level. And then I'm also using, of course, the location, which is at the top level, my funds or my management company's general partnership as well. And then this type dimension is where I'm tagging, well, was this a cost basis purchase or contribution? Was this a fair value adjustment or a realized gain or loss or a sale? And so I use that to really fine tune the transaction, but still on an investment, still post that to the GL account investments, but then use these dimensions to get all of that detail that we need for all those different types of reports and schedules. So I'm going to switch over then to the allocations, because I know that's really important for people that manage what's going on in funds. And so to really see what's going on with that and how we can allocate all the way down to the partner level, I'm going to go over here to my reporting again, and let's go over here, and I can either get that from a dashboard. Well, why don't we get it from a dashboard instead? So I'm looking at 12/31/2019, and let's go down here to my partner capital inception to date, and I'm going to bring that up on the screen here so we can start to interact with that. So this is your typical partner capital report where I'm showing general partners in one column. I'm showing my percentage allocations per the limited partner agreement. And then I've got a column for my limited partners, same sort of thing, and then a total. But of course, I need the ability to produce this report for an individual partner, which means that all of this information, my net unrealized gains, my net investment loss, which includes management fees, remaining net investment loss, all has to be allocated down to the individual partner level. And I'm going to open up this net unrealized gain on investments here. And let's go down and click on the limited partners. And I can see all kinds of entries that were made automatically when I ran the allocation engine. So that's taking then in this case, the fair value adjustment at the investment level, in this case, TurboTax is a preferred, and then it's taking the limited partner agreement percentage allocations and then allocating that down into, in this column, the individual partners, so that we're able to get this summarized report by general partner, limited partner, but we have the allocation in the background that's all the way down to the general and limited partner level. So let's take a look at how we can do that. So the building blocks to do that is really setting up these allocations. And I'm going to go over and show you where that's done and where that allocation engine sits. And so that's over here under account allocations. And so I'm going to go over and look at the allocation log and look at some of the past allocations that have been run on an automated basis. And so I'm running a couple of different scenarios of allocations depending upon a trigger that could happen according to the limited partner agreement. And so here, for example, I'm looking at allocation scenario 2, and this is the remaining net investment loss allocation. This is the net unrecognized gain allocation, and this is the management fee allocation. So when I go look at an individual allocation here, I can just view that, and that's going down and showing me the journal entry that got created when I ran that allocation. So from there, I can go into the allocation itself, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the details of how the allocation is set up. But in general, what we do is we point the allocation at what needs to be allocated, which is the source pool. In this case, I'm saying, I want you to go find the remaining net investment loss. And I group that together. And I'm saying, go find that for the current quarter. This is the basis of my allocation. So I'm pointing that to the percentages that are used under this particular scenario to allocate remaining net investment lost. And then from there, I'm saying, well, I want you to then do an entry. And these entries for allocations actually get entered into a user-defined book so that I can then have a report and I can point to allocation scenario number 1 or number 2 or show them on the same report because they're actually being booked into a user-defined book, so I can look at those separately. And then it's the system during the allocation process is going to then compute what the allocation percentages need to be and then take that source pool and allocate those according to those relative percentages. In this allocation, let's go back to the allocation. Let me go back here to another version. I'm gonna go back to the dashboard here, take a look at this VC fund dashboard. And I've got another scenario here, this scenario number 2, where we see that under scenario 1, management fees got allocated to both general partners and limited partners. And then something happened in the trigger, and we no longer allocated management fees to the general partners. They got allocated all to the limited partners. So that just became another allocation scenario, a group of allocations that could be run all at one time to produce the same report. So I didn't have to change the report. All I changed was pointing at that scenario 2's allocation percentage so that it could then pick up that particular allocation and those correct percentages. So the concept here is really to be able to allocate on an automated basis, set up all of those different allocation scenarios that could be triggered according to the partnership agreement, allocate those, run those allocations on an automated basis all at one time for a month, a quarter, whatever time period you need, the ability to go back and reallocate, and then allocate all of the components, management fees, realized, unrealized gains, all the way down to the partner level to get this rich reporting and partners capital reports. So I want to just recap, and let me stop sharing my screen here. And Kevin can perhaps bring back the recap slide, and we can just kind of recap what we've seen. And so the key concepts here that we just saw were really the concept of the real-time dashboards, so that we can show information on a dashboard, including reports and schedules, graphical representations of information, as well as these KPIs and metrics, give access to partners as well, and give them the ability to have their own dashboard with their own information down to the allocations for their particular level. We saw the concept of push button reports, all managed within the report center, as well as financial reports, as well as operational reports, the ability to click on the report, put filtering information in on a date range, on an investor, and show those reports full screen and drill down into underlying detail. We saw all of the entities that you're dealing with, funds, management companies, general partnerships, all managed in one login, but secured down to the user level, and giving that user only access to the functionality and the entities that they need to see. We saw that to support the level of detail that you need on your reporting, on the dashboards and so forth, that we use the concept of tagging transactions with dimensions down to the individual investment, down to the actual partners themselves. And then we finally saw the allocation engine that is in the system that can support multiple scenarios, that can allocate all of those different components of management fees, unrealized, realized gains and losses, all the way down to the partner level, and creating those automated journal entries that post to user-defined books, so that we can keep those separate from the normal books, and then include whichever allocation scenario that we need at the time for reporting. So I'm going to turn it back over and see if there's any questions on what you saw today.
Thanks, Earl. So I do have one that came through. It says, how easy is it to add an additional funds?
Yeah, that's a great question. So adding a fund is really going to the list of the funds and hitting the plus button, and then putting in the essential information that describes the fund, like the federal ID and some other generalized information, and then hitting go. And that fund is now set up, and because we're sharing the same GL accounts and have access to those dimensions, it'd just be a matter of setting up then those individual portfolio companies as the fund starts to invest in those. If there's additional limited and general partners for the fund, those can easily be added as that investor dimension, and off you go. So it's probably less than an hour process to set up a new fund.
Excellent. And then got a QuickBooks user here that's interested to know, like, how hard is it to learn this software, to make a transition to something like this?
Yeah, if you're used to using QuickBooks, it'll be a really rapid learning, because we can also look at menus on more of an iconic view. So it's very simple to understand where you're going in the system, where you need to go. But unlike QuickBooks, there's more of an audit trail. So that's makes it even easier to learn and find out, who actually created that transaction, who edited that transaction. All that information is there for you that you don't typically have in something like QuickBooks. So it's a lot more control over that as well. And then there's just access to a lot of information on training. Once you become an Intacct user, you have access to the Learning Center. There's a lot of free on-demand videos that you can watch and get real trained up on the system. And also, I would say that the help screens are excellent. There's context-sensitive help. Systems updated 4 times a year, which means all the help screens are updated at the same time. And chances are, if you are in a particular spot in the system and you say, help on where I'm at, it's going to pull up a screen and help you to get through something that you maybe do once a month or not that often. So a lot of ways that you can get up to speed on the software really quickly, and it's very simple to learn.
Fantastic. There's I think somebody's reacting to you saying you could share information, with partners. They want to know a little bit more about security and permissions.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So there's if you're sharing information with limited and general partners in the form of giving them access to information, you're going to give them a limited license to begin with. That they're going to be primarily view only with some drill down capability if you allow them to drill down a level to see some details behind that, and then they're going to have a specific dashboard that only they can see. So they're not going to be able to see anybody else's, any other limited partner or general partner's information. All of that is highly secure down to the information that only pertains to that limited partner or general partner.
Yeah, I got a couple of questions around reports and distributing them and that sort. If you could maybe hit on that for a minute.
Yeah, so if you have some individuals that you need to get some reports to, and they're not going to log into the system, then it's really simple to either schedule reports that can be sent to an individual or a group of people on a weekly, monthly basis, and that just happens in the system. And every Sunday, it may run information for the previous week or a month end. So that's one way to get information out to people. And then I showed in the demonstration where any of those reports can, right from the report screen, can be emailed out to people as well. And you've got the choice of whether you're sending that email to them as an attachment of an Excel spreadsheet or a PDF. Of course, they lose the ability to drill down because it's more of a static report, but it's very simple to just take that report and email it out in a couple of different formats to different recipients. Another way to get the reports is to run them automatically and then put them on a shared Dropbox or box.com. One of those cloud storage locations can also be where those reports end up, and then people know that's where I go to see those reports at the end of the month, or the 10th of the next month kind of situation.
Excellent. Well, that looks like we've covered all the questions that have come in. I'd like to thank everyone out there for participating and for all the great questions. And as you can see on the screen here, you've got my contact and Earl's. If you would like to learn more about what we're doing with Sage Intacct and the VC community, please reach out to us. We would love to talk more about it. Have a great rest of your day, and thanks for joining.